Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Thanks to your TV, which is a Cogeco entity, we have a chance to talk about the things that matter to Oakville. And one of the biggest things that Oakville says matters to Oakville, because I hear it from every direction, is climate change and the climate emergency. And joining me today and you to discuss this are the members of the board and the leaders of Future Energy Oakville. Future Energy Oakville is a nonprofit organization that flows out of the Community Energy Task Force work over the last couple of years. And I'm going to ask John Matheson, who's the president and the chair of the board, to set up how FEO came to exist and where we're going with that. John, and you could introduce maybe Herb and Lisa. Lisa is a distinguished resident, well known to everybody for her work in the environment, and you might want to explain how you got her to be on your board.
Happily. Thanks, Mayor Burton, and it's a pleasure to be here. So Future Energy Oakville, as you've just mentioned, really is the result of the creation of a community energy strategy over the last couple of years that the Oakville Energy Task Force developed. And this is a task force that has been community-led, community engaged with a strong amount of community participation in order to create a community energy strategy. That strategy was then endorsed by Town Council last February. And at that originally, that was the end of the Oakville Task Force's mandate. But being environmentally conscious representatives of the community, we didn't want this plan just to sit on a shelf somewhere. And so through the bulk of last year during COVID, and so things took a little longer than we would have liked, we determined what was required in order to keep the momentum going. And the result of lots of input from lots of experts in the field and lots of representatives from the community was a recommendation that we create a not-for-profit entity that can become an accelerator to implement the community energy strategy. And that's really where Future Energy Oakville came from. Herb Sinek, who's with us here today, he has been involved in the original Oakville Energy Task Force, and even before that, from a working group that was involved in collecting a lot of information, a lot of baseline data on the emissions footprint across Oakville, and continues to be very much involved today, supporting the task force and Future Energy Oakville. And Lisa Kohler is our newest board member. Very excited to have her on board of Future Energy Oakville. Joined us really just a couple of weeks ago officially, and very happy to have her here. And personally, John Matisse, and I'm the chair and president of Future Energy Oakville, and one of the three founding board members, along with two colleagues of mine, one who is currently CFO of Sheridan College, Wayne, and another senior representative from Siemens, Zahir, and I'm from, I guess my day job is at Hatch, where I'm involved in a lot of energy consulting and energy advisory services.
Yeah, it's a pretty important point that you guys are all volunteers holding down real high-level day jobs. And so it's good of your families to donate your time to us.
Yes, we thank them regularly.
So Herb, you, as John indicates, you're with Sheridan, and actually you've thoughtfully put that on the screen. I imagine that might show up in the broadcast. The most important thing to me about this is that the problem of climate change comes from the community's choices about how we'll use energy in our homes and how we'll use energy to get ourselves around, our vehicle choices. And together, that's about 60% of the problem. And I know Sheridan and the town of Oakville have both done pioneering work in energy control and energy management for the little bit that each of us as corporations contribute to climate change. And your work helped set down the baseline and show that if we don't change these two big things, our homes and our cars, which are about, I'm going to just round both off for ease of discussion, 30% each. And the other 40% is stuff that's really outside of local reach. If we don't deal with those two big things, it's hard to see how we're going to get very far fighting climate change. So how hard was it to set down the baseline? How reliable is the baseline that you did?
So we did quite an examination in data. We actually were able to get cooperation from the utilities serving Oakville to look at data at a fairly granular level. So we're mindful at the same, at one hand of not getting into fine detail how sex is using, so much money, so much gas and electricity, but looking neighborhood by neighborhood, we were able to really parcel out and model how much residential use, how much industrial use, and then we were able to move into compiled provincial data and surveys and see, what the transportation component could be. So it was really a two-stage process, one of gathering data and kind of doing a bottom-up estimate of what's happening in our community, and a top-down process of being able to check and verify that those are actually sensible and they're actually aligning. But to your point, really does show that we can't discount the transportation component, just how people are getting A to B, and we certainly have to pay attention to everything that's a building structure, from where we live to community centers and schools and institutions and city halls, and certainly also our businesses. We're all implicated.
So Lisa, you've been doing a lot of work with youth. I feel like you're the Pied Piper, with apologies to that, if that metaphor is a bad one, but you're the Pied Piper of the youthful energy in not just our town, but our region around climate change. What do you think the chances are that we can get the kids to persuade the parents to make the big changes that we all have to make?
Thanks, Mayor Burton. I think it's a great opportunity. We've certainly seen successes in other campaigns and other initiatives around, getting youth engaged and active around specific initiatives. Even if we were to look at the Blue Box campaign from many years ago, really, we saw change happen when students came home from their schools and talked to their parents about proper methods of recycling. We also have seen other successes with other environmental issues. So I think it's a great opportunity to educate the kids and empower them. And truth be told, the kids are in our community in Oakville, they are very bright, and they come to us asking for very specific programs and initiatives. We authentically listen to them, give them the tools they need, and then we see the change that we all are looking for. So I think with this opportunity, it's very similar. If we can give the kids the tools and the mechanisms and the mechanism to go home and ignite the change, we'll have very positive results.
All right. Now, let's talk about the funding for the FEO. The town has pledged a couple $100,000 spent and given and pledged a couple $100,000 for this, but you need more money, as I understand it. How much more do you need, and how have your fundraising efforts been going?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Mayor Burton. Really, it links into our top three priorities at the moment. The first is around growing the team, the full-time team. As you mentioned, everybody currently engaged is volunteering right now, and we are looking to hire an executive director, someone who knows the community well, is passionate about passionate about helping the community and making Oakville a better place to live. As well as a variety of other support roles, marketing, program leads for Future Energy Oakville. So this is our number one priority, and we're identifying, looking for those candidates. So if there's anybody listening to this show who is interested, feel free to reach out. The second of our top three priorities at the moment is expanding our board, and we've started that process with Lisa coming on board. We are looking to round out the diversity on our board, round out the expertise on our board, and are looking for a variety of additional local experts, those who are philanthropically inclined, who are perhaps the youth of the community that are interested in these types of initiatives. We're looking to grow that presence. And then the third is as you've just mentioned, is the funding. We can't hire folks without having the funding in place to do so. At present, the funding from the town has helped us get up and go. We've started some initial marketing activities. We've started some. We've got a website that's launching shortly. I was hoping to have been able to announce it today. It's not quite there. We've started some initial communication outreach, communication tools, and we're moving forward with the selection of a fundraising advisor to really work with us full time. Work with us in the short term to advise on how we move forward. But to date, the only official approved and welcomed funding that we've received is from the town. There are a number of other conversations taking place right now, but no one else has, as of the moment, committed. And again, if there are individuals out there that are listening to this broadcast and are interested in supporting the launch of this accelerator, please reach out.
Well, good pitch, and maybe we'll, like a telethon, every few minutes, maybe we should come back to the pitch. Operators are standing by to take your call and your donation, that kind of thing. I see signs of progress all around us that cause me to believe that many people are getting it. The town has a plan to increase its trees by more than 1 million trees in order to achieve our goal of a 40% urban forest canopy cover by the 200th anniversary of the town in a few years, in 2057. We've seen developers unveil plans for various forms of green energy and or passive homes in the new developments above Dundas, which means that future households may not be as big a problem as current and past households, because that 30% from households, we're talking about the past, the existing households. So it's good if new ones don't add to the problem, don't add as much to the problem. We've been fortunate to be able to change our bus fleet from diesel to electric, with 57 diesel buses being phased out and replaced with electric buses, and 16 new electric vehicles to expand the fleet, and charging stations around town to keep them going. These are wonderful in terms of trying to bend the curve on future transportation and future homes, but the real problem is to get the existing, the great majority of what's happening comes from let's round off 80,000 households that we have, and we've got to reach them. We all have to get over the idea that, well, I'm only one person and my contribution doesn't amount to anything, so I won't do anything. And when you add that all up, well, gosh, you have climate change. So, and it's a really big number when you add us all up. Another reason for optimism is the almost $2 billion being invested to create only electric vehicles at the Oakville Ford Assembly Plant. So there's good things happening. We've just we've got to find a way into the hearts and minds of the existing households about their cars and their homes. Lisa, are the kids coming up with ideas for how to make that magic shift? Or Herb, you work at a university. Well, I promoted you. You work at a college that has degree granting ability, so it's more than a college. You're in touch with kids too. And for that matter, John, you guys hire some of the brightest young people in the world at Hatch. I mean, it's one of the world's leading engineering consulting firms. What are you hearing from the youngsters? What guidance can they give us?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, sure. I think that young students and young leaders can give us a lot of expertise and experience through a program that is launched throughout Halton Generation Green. We've seen students track, measure, and then reduce their impact. So if high school students can track, measure, and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by modifying the way they travel to and from school or to and from a soccer practice, I think that really shows us adults how we can modify our behavior just as they have done. In addition, students have done such projects at home as energy reduction projects. They've even convinced some parents to change specific high emitting or high energy intensive appliances at home. We had one student that did energy audits on her home and then convinced her parents by switching to Energy Star products, not only will they be saving the environment, but they'll be saving their pocketbook every month. So with those young champions really leading the way and not only just talking the talk, but they're actually walking that talk and they're actually producing it. And one thing I like to talk about the kids too, and citizens and residents, fellow Oakvillians, is if not you, then who? We all have a role to play here. So if you're not going to make the change, who will? And I love that you mentioned that, Mayor Burton, and you ground truth, the fact that the municipality is doing a lot, with the EV charging stations across Oakville. You're putting in all the foundation that we need as residents to now it's time for us to lean in and for us to work. And I think through FIO, we'll continue to add to that and accelerate the change and bring in the other expertise and the other initiatives to really make Oakville once again lead in climate action.
All right. What about you, Herb? What are you hearing?
Yeah, if I could start with Oakville's climate emergency, just as an interesting reference point for our conversation, to think about what it means to actually declare an emergency in a community. So I can reflect back to my youth, my ideal early 20 years, and thinking about the state of our conversation at that time was think globally, act locally. And the idea was we could make incremental shifts in our practice at the time, and we would lead to avoiding negative outcomes and perhaps creating a better future. And, frankly, looking over a career in the energy and environment, I think we've collectively, and I'm painting myself in the middle of this too, we've squandered an opportunity. We've squandered that opportunity for that transitional change to a point where we face a climate emergency. We face the need to urgently transform the systems we come to. The reason I raise that in response to your question about the voice of our youth is they see it. They see it quite plainly, that the relative inaction on files and behaviors and systems we could have changed has led them to the point where what they've inherited from us is an emergency and a crisis. So they haven't lost their determination to make it better and to get us through it. But at the same time, they're looking very squarely at us for where's your leadership in it? I mean that, I'm asking that of all of us. Are we stepping up? Are we actually really legitimately dealing with it? Or is it going to be our excuse to be business as usual?
Well, I think the evidence is everybody's really good at thinking globally. It's acting locally where there's been a little bit of shortfall. John, what about the bright young engineers that you're taking on? They got any insights for us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an interesting transition moving, through Lisa's high school and youth connections and Herb's Sheridan college, and then us at Hatch, we hire graduates. We hire a lot of co-ops and interns as well. But when you get to that graduate stage, these young professionals are looking for a place to live, and they're looking for a place to live that has net zero options available to them. And so that there is this growing demand that 20, even 10 years ago, you would not have seen on the demand side. And they really are looking to developers, to renovation firms, to provide offerings that meet their more climate focused lifestyles. And having those net zero options available to them is important. And Mayor Burton, you mentioned a couple of housing developments up in the Dundas area is worth noting. Minto, Brookhaven, Mattamy, they're all doing some interesting projects in that space with geo-exchange systems on towers and multi-tower condo projects. We're looking for that next step, going out into entire greenfield developments of district energy systems, or a broader geo-exchange system. At Hatch, we recently helped actually one of those firms develop a project north of Toronto that would have no natural gas connections to it. So you're fully removing the gas emissions from heating your home, and that project has moved ahead and has been quite successful. But the youth and the recent graduates are looking for products, not just in the transportation space. There's a lot of talk about EVs, and a lot of people here are saying if they don't already own one, their next car will be an EV. And now I think there's a hope that future developments will incorporate the elements of the community energy strategy in their planning, that suppliers will listen to the youth and provide options available to them.
Well, I share that optimism that you're expressing. I remember very clearly 15 years ago when I became mayor, talking to developers, and I'm happy to mention Mattamy because they've done an about face. 15 years ago, when I would talk to them about building greener houses, they would tell me, yeah, but the customer wants marble. And now they're building geothermal, they're building little neighborhood district energy setups, and they're doing it without having to. There is no government power to make them do it yet. And they're doing it because the customers, those bright young folks that you're hiring, have created the demand that's driving them to do it. So that brings me to, how do we drive the existing places? Brings me back to, how do we get the existing folks to change? And there's been some discussion about, well, we need incentives for them to do it. Never mind that I think they would save money, which ought to be incentive enough, but there are incentives for shifting to EVs, and there are incentives for reducing your greenhouse gas emissions from your home. What's your take on those incentives? Are they robust enough? And if they aren't, what should they be?
I guess I'll take that on. Absolutely, there is federal incentives currently for EVs, as well as retrofitting your homes. But in my humble opinion, I think we do need to amplify that incentivization. It is rather a costly endeavor to do a deep home energy retrofit. Now, there are light retrofits that one can do, but the change that we really do need is those deep home energy retrofits. Just like John mentioned, really getting off gas and transitioning from your conventional furnace to another heat source is really what we're talking about. So I think, people hopefully have the incentive of their children or grandchildren's future, but fiscally, it would be nice if there was some more incentives out there, just so that we can ensure that people make this transition that is so desperately required.
Well, also talk about how much of an, is there a target amount that the incentive needs to be? Maybe that can be something that council and I take on as a agitation project with the upper levels of government.
Well, I would just add, building on that, Mayor Burton, that there have been some incredible successes in Oakville when all three levels of government do get involved in supporting these initiatives. The Ford plant that you mentioned earlier, the vehicles that are being built there is a great example. The electrification of the buses for Oakville Transit, that's another great example where all three levels of government came together to provide funding to really make a change. You talked earlier about sort of moving the needle and how there is a growing demand from youth in this area, but we need to move it faster. We need to accelerate the transition in order to achieve the targets that we have in mind. But when it comes to specific numbers, coming back to your question, I believe the federal program at the moment, I think it's $5,000 or up to $5,000 for home retrofits. And if you need to increase the insulation in your attic or replace a couple of windows, you're probably covered. But the deep level of retrofits that you need, getting off of natural gas, putting in a geo exchange system, adding solar to your roof to offset your emissions. These are much more expensive programs that the current much more expensive initiatives that the current funding program just can't capitalize on.
And none of this abdicates our personal responsibility to undertake these activities. I think the common entry point is that they need to be easy to access, very easy to run. And we need, our job is to eliminate all the barriers to making it happen.
Well, maybe a takeaway for me is maybe the town should maybe we should put a page up on our website that tells you, here's the cost and here's the folks that'll do it, and here's the incentive, a one window approach to how do you get started. I think just take it as a to-do list. I want to thank you, all three of you, for spending the time that you have with us today. This is a really important thing, at least to our kids, and I know to many of our residents. Council didn't declare a climate emergency out of the blue. We were led to it, so to speak, by widespread community demand, and which you guys, you personify that because you come from that, and you clearly took seriously the old adage: start where you are, use what you've got, and do what you can. Hopefully, we can get somewhere with that approach. I want to thank you for tuning in today and watching, and I hope we see you next time.